Yeah, thank you, Catherine. Thank everybody jumping to this session. Hopefully it will be a good one. Hi, Sam. Yeah, starting from me, following your funny artifact and story about climbing. Actually, I'm 56. I'm not really climbing that much anymore as I was used to. So it's more than bringing me to the heights. I'm trying to bring our clients and partners to get the best level as much high as they can in terms of their marketing activity. My climbing actually is more indoor climbing and indoor facility in the town and few cliff trip over the weekend, not too much more. To be relevant to this discussion, actually, I've been a salesperson almost all my life. My last 15 years, I actually ran this is the 4 major startup of MarTech from Canada or United States within the marketing ecosystem. Now working with Snipp, running the EMEA business for them, and actually taking care of delivering loyalty engagement and promotion platform all over EMEA. And so lead nurturing is something that actually we live and breathe in every conversation with our prospects and clients. And so hopefully my experience will be of any level of interest here and delivering some good thought and things for food for thinking for you all. Sam, over to you.
Thank you, Mario. I mean, you saying the rock climbing to help your customers, that made me look really bad, I'm not going to lie. But no, lovely to meet everyone. I'm Marketing Director for New Statesman Media Group. And yeah, so I've been there for a couple of years. And before that, I was looking after their marketing solutions before I went into the marketing director role. So quite hands-on in MarTech itself. And NSMG, so New Statesman Media Group, is a global media company. Our main title is the New Statesman magazine, which hopefully some of you know. If not, I'm not doing the best job. But then there's also a number of other magazines and data products that we have. And a couple of years ago, we launched a marketing solution called Lead Monitor. So it was, yeah, it's quite interesting as a publisher with lots of content and data to launch a lead kind of creation tool. And what it does is kind of a bit of lead generation, lead nurturing, and we work with our clients to help them solve those issues. So yeah, it's quite an interesting take using kind of a mass amount of content and data coming from kind of more of the buy side, but then actually working with our clients and going through each of these individual issues. So yeah, love getting my hands dirty with MarTech and really excited to be talking today, and hopefully we can kind of give some good advice and tips from our experience. So yeah.
Indeed.
Right.
So yeah, let me start asking. So the easy job for me and the more complicated one for you to break the ice. We are talking about lead nurturing, so I believe it makes a lot of sense just sharing your thought as well as my thought on what does lead nurturing mean to you / I would say to your prospect and client, Sam.
Yeah, no, it's quite an interesting question because lead nurturing, everyone, you know, just kind of thinks of emails being sent out to a prospect, kind of get them towards a sales opportunity. But simply put, for me, lead nurturing is just kind of a nice way of saying, well, maybe a nasty way of saying relationship building and relationship maintaining. So rather than looking at it as this kind of just an automated process, exactly, yeah, it's all about how you can build that kind of brand connection with your user, how you can get them from being someone who is anonymous, who's just visited your website or maybe walked into your store, all the way through the sales funnel to making them into a returning customer, but more importantly, an advocate. And that really is the main goal. It's not just kind of making that first sale, and I know we're going to talk a bit more about this later, but it's really, you know, how can you get more out of them? How can you increase their kind of lifetime value? And how can you really make that lasting relationship rather than just trying to be kind of cold and faceless? It really is, to me, a lot about the relationship building. And on that, so working with lots of clients, and this is why I found the question quite interesting, is because lead nurturing could mean hundreds of things to hundreds of clients. And that normally comes down to how each client defines their, or has their definition of what a lead is. So most companies will have leads, you'll have MQLs, you'll have SQLs, prospects into a client, or you know, however you're kind of actually defining them. But each one, say as an MQL, could be a bit different to every company. So depending on what your business outcome is, an MQL could be, you know, a white paper download, whereas to other companies, it could be someone who's attended an event, or another company, it could be someone who's, you know, left their details in store. So how users and how businesses actually define lead nurturing completely changes per company. And again, for an SQL, we've had some clients that we worked with where if they have sent an inquiry, okay, fair enough, that's directly an SQL. Whereas others have actually looked at more qualification steps and said, where we want them to define, certain engagement. We want to make sure they're the budget holder. And we also want them to click this button that says, I want to purchase all your products. So I think really, what does it mean to me? It means a lot of things. I guess it's a bit of a cop-out answer. But for every different company that I've been working with and every company that I've worked in, it really comes down to how you define it, kind of what audience you're working with, and how you really get them from step A to step Z or Z. So yeah, Mario, back at yourself. It's interesting also coming from more of a sales angle, because I know I'm talking from marketing experience. What does lead monitor, I just said, what does lead nurturing mean to you and Snipp?
Yeah, so I'm totally in agreement with you for the most you say in terms of what lead nurturing might be representing for us or our partner and clients. One of the statements I like the most when we talk about lead nurturing is defining this as the process of developing and maintaining relationship with customers at every stage of their journey. As you say, it's not just one single action, one single tactics or techniques, one single channel. Is a combination and can be different client by client, vertical by vertical, the way that marketeers are elaborating and executing their nurturing strategy. And this is driving me three major highlights. One is lead nurturing is related to every stage of the client journey. One of the main mistakes I see few brands executing is, I believe, is a kind of ambiguity coming from the lead, from the wording standpoint. They are just generating content, activities to transform the lead in a client, and then they forget about him or her. And actually, we all know it's much expensive to create a new client than to nurture and keep the client on. And so one of the main mistakes is really not following this lead processing when the lead become to be a client, because it's a different way related to the old-fashioned marketing funnel, moving a lead to a suspect, to a prospect, to a client, etc. Now, the flow, the user journey is much more fluid and dynamic. And this is triggering me to the second highlight, that is user journey. Actually, it's easy, like every conversation I have with marketeers, it lends to talk about user journey, because I totally believe the user journey is actually what resonates to our client, what the clients are interested in following and executing to get in touch with the brand. And the latest consideration is the communication has to be relevant. For a truly effective journey to lead nurture somebody, the content you deliver whenever, when we transact, when we talk, when we read, when we visit, etc., the content is a king. And so the combination of the appropriate content as part of a user journey, long-lasting relationship that does not stop when a lead becomes a client. I believe this is a kind of a better description of my user journey experience. And talking about content, I believe, I know if you want to add something, you are much expert than I in content or content management because of your role in your media company.
Yeah, I was going to say on the first point, we found it's around 3 times more expensive to acquire a new customer than to retain a customer. Sure. So it's easier to keep them. So lead nurturing shouldn't just be about starting off afresh and acquiring, but also where do you have those cross-selling opportunities? Where can you generate more value from your clients? And is there different departments who are contacting these leads or current clients that you can then cross-sell within your company too? I know on the point of content, I think, content's king. And I think for publishers, we're quite lucky because it's like having the whole castle at some points. And I think the best part of content is it really shows you what a user is interested in. So I think if you have a lot of content and you have it tagged right and you have, say, kind of the right topics, the industries, you can then start to understand each user's affinity, their interests. And after a while, you can start to predict, and this is a bit further down the line, but start to look at their intent to purchase. So if they're constantly reading about one topic or trend, how can you then push them towards a product that you're selling that is around that topic or trend? So I think, content's very important on kind of the front end and user level, but also when you are emailing them or contacting them or nurturing them, it's kind of the key driver in terms of how you can nurture. And I think, and I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit in terms of what people do wrong with content in particular, but I think it's very easy to kind of set up certain lead nurturing campaigns and programs. But the hardest thing is keeping it fresh, keeping new content, keeping it personalized, and constantly tuning it and innovating, because that's where it really comes in, becomes really tricky. Right, I'm going to switch slides, and what we've got is a bit of a poll to make sure everyone's still awake. But we've got a question on screen. I think all the audience can click on one of the answers, and the question is, who here has a comprehensive lead nurturing strategy in place? So whether it's flawless, yes, but needs some work, I'm not too sure, or no. And I believe there was a stat by InvestPro last year that we were talking about previously, and 35% of B2B marketers have a lead nurturing strategy set up. But that means, a big 65% don't currently have a lead nurturing strategy set up.
Yeah,
exactly. And I think, it's not the end of the world, but it's a very useful technique to make them go from A to B. So, it's absolutely fine if you don't, but I think let's see if it kind of starts to match the results that we've got.
Yeah. I also got some kind of stats that is still very related to nurturing, lead nurturing, and from the B2B and the B2C approach. I got the same, based on what I was saying before about when to stop a lead nurturing process, only the 29% of brands nurture existing customer behind the initial purchase. And actually, again, it's like the 80% of them, they forget about you. They forget about all the personas, or the Marios, or the Sams that they've been nurturing just with the scope of making a transaction. Yeah. And back about content, the 59% of marketeers agree that creating content is one of the top challenges of the lead nurturing strategies. I'm not sure here it means we have to do it. Is it a hot topic, or challenges like I need to pick up the phone and call Sam to help me how to define the appropriate content. But actually, they all agree content is key.
Yeah, it's one thing you constantly have to change and personalize. So it is a tricky one. Right, I think that's been a minute. Should we move over to the results? Big drum roll. Here we go. Right, so 18.8%. Yes, it's flawless. That I love to see that. That's fantastic. You should be up here talking with us on this, and hopefully on the Q&A afterwards for sure. 37.5%. Yes, but needs some work. 18.8%. Well, I'm not too sure, and 25% no. So I think when we were saying the stat was 35% in just B2B.
Yeah, it's pretty aligned. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too far off. And I would say, and I think what we're going to talk about today, and what we already have been, is, it's never too late to start. And, we can definitely give some tips afterwards if you do want to talk to us on that. But no, that's very interesting. I'm going to jump on to the next slide. And this one is back at you, Mario. Why and how do you nurture leads? So it's a bit of a double-part question.
Yeah, so let's start from the why. And for supporting the why, I'm using something that I've been keeping using the last year in similar event like this one, but even in one-to-one conversation with prospect and client. And actually, this is more a feedback coming from them to me than more what they believe from the marketeer standpoint. That is something that I name the virtual circle. So basically, it's an easygoing discussion to me. The more a brand is nurturing a relationship with the Marios, with the Sams, and the more a brand is creating appropriate content, contextualized, that resonate, that is interesting for the different personas, the more these different personas, actually myself personally, I feel okay to share my experience, to deliver my fantastic zero first-party data explicitly, so that my brand, the brand I like to deal with, is going to be creating a better understanding of myself to serve me the best. So to give me the what next best action, offer, promotion, interest I might be interested to pick up highest chance. So the point I'm making here, why doing lead nurturing? Because through lead nurturing, we are making the Marios in a comfortable zone to deliver data, thanks to which the brand is get to know more Marios and is more effective, and is creating easily as an automation, as a next step point, a higher increase and higher frequency and higher expenditure from my side. That's something I feel pretty direct. It's logically a long cycle. It's not something that is coming after 1 day, 1 minute, 1 month when you start your nurturing process. But the more the communication, the nurturing is interesting to me, the more I'm back to talk, to visit, to invest, to spend money with a given brand. That's my why taken. I don't know if you...
I was going to say, do you think there's ever a state when there's too much nurturing? Can you nurture someone too much off the back of that?
You know, that's a very good point. And actually, you know, also when we talk about, and you made a good entry at the beginning, we are not just talking about marketing automation, but when we talk about marketing automation, it comes sooner or later, what about the frequency? Now, yes, it could be. But to me, if somebody is opting out a specific environment, a newsletter, a campaign, whatsoever, is not really for the latest communication that wrongly eventually has been sent over, but is more about the full process doesn't work that well, or the content that has been created and delivered was not really so relevant to that person. Mm-hmm. So logically, we have to have respect to the people. We have to have respect not to bombard all this community with social and communication, email, SMS, or push whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But again, the more the content is interesting and is stimulating a conversation, the least the opt-out situation should come. That's my thinking, actually.
No, I think that's a really fair point. Off the back of that, I was going to say, so obviously, content's really key when we talk about a lot of this. And one of the main whys, you know, I'd agree on is kind of, you know, we look to automate a lot of our processes. We want to kind of have chain emails going out. We want them to be tagged correctly. We want them to be getting, you know, the right notification, being sent to the right event, to kind of take out a lot of that manual intervention. But it really becomes almost two ends of kind of a sword when it comes to content and automation, because you're really fighting, and it's almost at an information overload stage when it comes to the internet. We've got more content than ever. There's more publishers than ever. Every company's creating content. So you have to really fight to get your message across to the right people. So I think I completely agree with you. You have to make sure content really resonates. You have to make sure it's personal. And I think a lot of that you can do from successful persona work, understanding your audience, kind of doing a lot of iterative testing, getting a lot of feedback. I think it is really key to make sure, that message resonates. Because I can definitely say when automation and content has been done badly, you get the opposite. You get really adverse effects.
Totally.
And I mean, we've all definitely had an email when it says, "Hi, insert first name here." And you can see where they're going with it. They're trying to make it personalized on a mass scale, but it's having the complete opposite effect on me. It makes them look like they're building a relationship instead to, you mean nothing to me, you're an automated piece. So it really is, that balance of how much do you build the relationship, how much do you automate, and how do you have that fine line in between? I think that's just, a really point on content.
I fully agree. And on the how aspect, I mean, just for sake of time, I'm watching the timing here. So let's say 5 minutes for closing this conversation. On the how, I'm back to say the three major topics I typically discuss when we open up strategic top-down lead discussion, lead nurturing discussion with prospecting clients. We pray them to do long-term value activities, as well as not to just rely on transactional information, or not to push communication out only when we are making transaction with them. And again, just using content and eventually also contest-based promotion or kind of activity and touch point, because it's proof that contest-based activities as a tactics, as an engagement or loyalty tactics, if you will, is something that is bringing one of the highest level of redemption in any kind of communication. But I would say the most important point to me is avoiding to make tactical communication, but create a strategy that, again, follow the full life cycle of a given prospect, lead, client, advocate of a given brand, and creating the appropriate long-lasting relationship that is proved to bring results sooner than later. Okay, and I have some nice story if you have time to talk about eventually as a use case for that, but I like to hear from you also on the how, what you're thinking are.
Yeah, I mean, interest of time, I think one big how in terms of, how should you, or potentially like best practice, is looking at the omni-channel approach. And I know this is something we've spoken about before, Mario.
Yep.
And lead nurturing isn't just sending email campaigns out. And, we're all guilty of it. We've all done it. And most people, I believe it was 75% of marketers from a recent survey said lead nurturing is email campaigns. Because the first thing, if you use something like Pardot, you can use it, like your engagement studios, Marketo, you've got your smart campaigns. And all of a sudden you're putting it in there and you're making this campaign, and sometimes it stops there. And my key thing on the how would be to make sure that all of your channels are speaking to each other. And working with clients in the past, I've seen them when they've had their events team sending out one kind of email comms and inviting them to X event on X topic. And we've had their other product marketing team sending out around trying to convert to another product. And as the end user, and I think you'll agree on this, they don't care who it's coming from, because to them, you're one brand. And whatever department's sending, whether it's even sales or marketing, whether it's events, product, tech, whoever's sending a campaign, to the end user, you're just one brand. So I think it's really key to make sure all of your channels are talking and feeding to each other. And whether that's, we're getting a bit more techie and thinking about kind of like CDP, and we've got your single user ID to stitch that data, or whether you have any other kind of integration tools for that data flow. I think really mapping it out and working all these different interaction and multi-touch points makes sense to the end user, because if not, you're going to alienate them, and it'll have that adverse effect that isn't nurturing or building that relationship.
No, I totally trust that. And actually, again, for the sake of time, if you go to our takeaway, and then we leave a bit of room for the Q&A. Actually,
so we've got one more question. Jumping ahead.
Oh, okay. You're right. I was just checking
quick
my
fire round
clock.
on this one.
So quick one. Okay. So let's say, as it comes in relation to create a long-lasting experience, I remember a scenario where actually I was not yet in Snipp, but Snipp opened up a relationship with a big top FMCGs worldwide present from North America, running some dedicated independent promotion campaign for activate and validate a new client and started nurturing them along the path. And then after a few years, they jointly decided to create something more, again, long-lasting, like instead of running a specific promotion for a specific brand or for a specific set of products, just creating a path so that there is a dialogue, there is a bidirectional discussion among brands and clients, so that brands, again, is starting collecting and gathering data very relevant to the consumer behavior, so that it can react in a better way, in a more personal way, in more contextual ways. And so they move from running independent campaign, let's say, to a more holistic January 1st, 31st of December program, where, and adding also aside the transactional relationship, many ways for creating interaction onto the omni-channel paradigm, as we were saying, some, to give the voice to the client and listening them. And that was a huge success in terms of lead generation, indeed. Yeah. So do you have any other kind of similar example?
Yeah, so one of them is, and I think I kind of briefly touched upon it, and there's the channel alignment, but also I think quite interesting having a sales and marketing person on is functional alignment. So I think when defining, and a lot of lead nurturing kind of working with clients, it always goes back down to the definition stage of the user journey, the sales funnel, and how you're defining and collecting these data points for your leads. So when it goes down to that, you really have to align between sales and marketing to understand what is an MQL and what is an SQL. And it shouldn't just be kind of two closed off functions, but they should almost be joint at the hip. I know there's a term, smarketing, I think is one of the latest kind of terms to use that. And I quite like the term actually, but I think, no, it's really important to make sure kind of they're singing from the same book. They're talking to the client in the same way, because if not, as I said earlier, the client only sees one interaction with one business. And I've worked with a couple of companies in the past. There was one actual global tech firm, and they had a really good lead nurturing kind of system set up in terms of kind of email channels and what they were pushing out. But they did there was a lapse in how they were pushing the content out. So they had one channel which was pushing content out around one subject, and then they weren't looking at their thresholds that came in. They weren't looking at the content that was going towards the same users, because they weren't excluded from other paths. And it became a bit, like we were saying earlier, a bit more kind of a spam type approach. And it didn't work, and they were wondering why kind of their conversion rate was low. And on both campaigns, they dropped because they were overlapping in terms of audiences. So really, another point is, to make sure, you have those thresholds in place. You're not spamming them. And one thing that I'd always recommend, if you ever have time, is go through the whole journey as the lead and see how it is, see what you get on the website, see what pop-ups you have, see kind of what events you're invited to, see what email campaigns you get. And I guess, doing that is one of the best ways you can actually see all of these different attribution touch points and how they fit together from a lead's perspective. Because most of the time that's the one thing is, people forget, they activate it, or they activate and wait, and they don't go back, refine and test. And before you know it, they can get kind of outdated, or they need to be optimized quite quickly, which I would say, yeah,
testing,
definitely I've noticed.
Yeah, and testing, I mean, just to underline that concept, testing is a must. I mean, even in the last 2 years, I mean, not so much before, we saw how much the client, the consumer behavior has been changing, right? And so if you're not doing appropriate test and buy, test and learn practice in every nurturing strategy you deploy, you might be believing that what was working a few years back is still working now. That might not be the case because of the new technological waves and because of what happened because of the pandemic situation, but eventually even for positive situation, again, clients are changing their behavior to, and also they're changing what they are looking for brands from year to year. That's another kind of message I like to share here.
Yeah, agree. I'm going to switch over now. We've got a couple of minutes left to two of our key takeaways. And yep. I believe these slides are all going to be sent out afterwards, and we can definitely feel free to get in touch with me and Mary to talk through these points. But I think for me, it's, it feels kind of like philosophical at this point, but every business's solutions and customers are unique, and it's not a one-size-fits-all with lead nurturing. So I would definitely, if you haven't got one set up, do some persona work, do some audience work, do some kind of feedback work, and really understand how you can start to build that whole journey out from step one. And if you do have a piece in place, make sure you're constantly optimizing it and testing it, and also, testing it yourself to see how it fits from kind of a lead's perspective. Mario, do you want to talk for yours quickly as well?
Yeah, my one is very, very easy. But honestly speaking, I face in working and designing, strategically speaking, top-down, some engagement or lead nurturing or loyalty programs. Sometimes we tend to forget about the basics. So my mantra is treat your client, so I'm talking to the brand, treat your client as you, as a person, would like to be treated by your brand. Actually, I'm part of some 50s plus newsletter, loyalty program, etc., just to feel how this works, to understand my reaction, my feedback, and learn by all of them best practices and avoiding mistakes. And the best comment I would ever do is really, if I feel okay to be part of that program, let's just do it. Let's just design something me as a member I would like to be in. I would like to be live and breathe and to attend. That's my high-level comment. That actually resonates not only with lead and nurturing, but with many, many of the marketing processes, I would say. But I believe it was a good one.
Thank you so much, Mario and Sam. It's time for Q&A session. Thanks for that insightful session. And we have Lauren here commenting. It was a brilliant and helpful session. Thank you both as well from the audience member.
Thank you, Lauren. It's so kind of you.
And yes, a question about obviously the key topic, lead nurturing. So would you say it's more of a process or technological matter, and how to cope with both? Obviously, it depends on different industry or, client sets, and it's differently, but what's your take on that? Sam, would you like to go for it first?
Yeah, I'll give it a go. So I think it's definitely a bit of both. I think the process is the journey and how you kind of piece that together with all your different channels and all your different tools. But the technological side of things, the process won't work without the tech and without the data in place. So if you don't have, the proper tagging in place, you don't have the right data being fed in and provisioned, you don't have the right privacy notices in place, then you can't use that data, you can't stitch that data, and all of a sudden the whole process disappears. So I'd say it's definitely a two-parter. I think you do need the data and the tech in place, but then also the process is really important and key in terms of how that user goes through. So bit of this, bit of that is my answer.
Mario?
Yeah, I kind of agree. I would say that from the process standpoint, I mean, all the time we start with a kind of readiness assessment to really understand it from the organizational standpoint, from the people standpoint, and from the knowledge standpoint. What we would like to envision and design actually is something that can be matched to the internal organization. But similarly, as some say, with the complexity of today, the speed of reaction of today, and the time to market that is becoming something unbelievable in terms of speed, You also need a good technology for supporting all the automatism, for learning, understanding, and taking decisions, not really for people, but supporting the decision of the human beings and making their life much easier. So easy to say is a both of the two. I would say I would start from the process standpoint, even if I'm a technological vendor, but we like to discuss about return on investment starting from there, I would say.
That's brilliant. And I'm going to actually change to another question to ask you that's often being asked at our summit. What keeps you awake at night in terms of this particular question? So that probably, and I mean, your answers were perfect, but what really in either your own organization or the clients that you're helping, is it more the process, or is more of the technology, the platform, or what platform to go for? Those kind of decisions trouble you more?
I have one, if you don't mind, Sam. I mean, what actually we look for, and if this is missing, we are not making our night, is the executive leadership commitment. Because, I've been selling technology for 23 years now. The perfect technology that does everything with no issues does not exist that easy, okay? Similarly, processes based on people are different one-to-one. So if you have a solid executive commitment, everything can be solved. So I'm not sleeping well overnight if I see that given brand, that given company is not coming with the appropriate executive commitment. If this is coming, all the rest is something you can face and you can fix, more or less. But I wouldn't avoid to have a good sleep because of technology issues. Otherwise, I mean, I would have been having a very bad life to now.
No, I would say I completely agree on that point. I think your text is only as good as the buy-in you get in the company. And I mean, we've all done and seen a million tech vendor pitches, all these different MarTech tools, Scott Brinker's 11,000 odd, or however many more there are now. We've all probably been on loads of these pitches and so gone through these kind of processes. And yeah, I've seen tools really successful and I've seen tools fail. And the ones that fail are the ones that don't have buy-in. They're not included in the objectives. They're not they don't have weekly or monthly or kind of practical business user cases. And they normally get sold on the nice UI and some pretty analytics that come with it. So I definitely agree with tech. But in terms of the original question, keeping me up at night, probably just too many espresso martinis could be one. But no, if not that, I guess data privacy has always been a piece that everyone needs to kind of stay on top of. It's constantly evolving every day, and it can open you up to kind of big legal cases. So I think that will always maybe not keep me up, but always have me on my toes. And I think everyone should be constantly looking at the next steps and making sure we're transparent and open with our data privacy. That's got to be my point.